Hello and welcome to the Ellen Made Book Club and my November TBR. I had planned to play my TBR game this month, my TBR jar of games back there, and in my notebook I have written no reading events because I have participated in a lot of reading events lately. I did in August with young adult fiction. I did Shorty September in September with short books. And then in October, I've participated in TBR Harvest. And all of those events have been a lot of fun, but I had planned to spend November and December just mood reading or just reading the books that I have left to read for different challenges and like my own, reading plans. And all of this was knowing that my friend Kat at Curious Cat was going to do Neurovember in November. And I was like, I know it's an event and I'm going to support it and all of that and share the video, but I'm not going to participate. But then I watched Kat's announcement video and her recommendations video, both of which will be linked in the description as well, of course. And also there is a Google Doc. No, Google Doc with different reading prompts and activity prompts, and it's all just so fun. And there's a really low bar of entry. You only need to read one book to participate, and the activities are really cozy and fun and like self-care kind of activities. And I also have this goal, which I mentioned again in a recent video, to find the balance between participating in events and reading what I want to read for myself. I don't want it to have to be one or the other. I want to be able to participate in events, but like participate in my own way, which is how you should always do everything. But I tend to get very wrapped up in it, and like I go all in and I make these like very ambitious TBRs, and I scout books that sound really interesting and that would fit the prompts really well. And lots of the books that I had in my like TBR / recommendations video last year were memoirs, and they were heavy topics, and it was mental health and just kind of heavy and serious. And I am very interested in all of those stories still, and I don't mind a serious book, but I also know that I need to have some fun as well and not make everything into such an assignment and like such a chore for myself. Like the event itself is really fun, and then I make it into like this long list of things that I have to accomplish, which is no. I should also mention that the Neurovember event focuses on neurodiversity, neurodivergence, celebrating different kinds of brains and how we all work in different ways. There are also themes of like psychology, mental health, the brain, and like all of the things that come with that, like memory and perception and all kinds of things. And I think that's all very interesting. The way that Kat set everything up this year just made it really fun and easy, and so now I want to participate. It might just be with one book, we will see, but I have picked out a couple of books that I'm interested in reading anyways, and that they just happen to fit the prompts. And then I have a couple of other books that I have found and sort of added in because of the prompts, and I'm not going to force myself to read anything that I don't want to read. I just want to be able to get a bingo if I can. I am giving myself the challenge of making it as easy and fun for myself as possible. That's my challenge. So like I mentioned, Kat has come up with a list of different prompts, and you can just use the prompts as they are. You can use them in a TBR jar if you want and just pick random ones, or you can make your own bingo, which sounded really fun to me, and so that is what I have decided to do. I really love the idea of the TBR jar, but in an effort to make it as easy and fun for myself as possible, I wanted to be in control of which prompt I decided to fulfill. So the way I chose to do this, because this is what works the best for my brain, I wrote out all of the prompts from the Google Doc in my notebook, and then on the other page I just have like books that might fit those prompts, and then from that list of books I came up with a list of 11 books, maybe 12, that I'm interested to read. And I'm not going to read all of them, but those are like my options. And I also chose some activities that sounded good to me. And then I put them on my own bingo board. And this bingo board is just a 4x4 bingo board with books and activities. And then I thought maybe 4 is too much, because some of the possible bingos that I could get on this board would require me to read 4 books. And maybe that's too much. So I decided to also make 2 versions of 3x3 bingo boards, so they just have 9 squares on them. I'll put the bingo up on the screen at the end of the video when we can, you know, fill in the activities and everything. But let's get into the books that I have picked and what prompts they would fit. One of the prompts is to read a memoir by a neurodivergent person, and for that I have A Strong Female Character by Fern Brady, which I know that my library has because I asked them to purchase it last year. And they did. And then I also have Heartberries by Terese Mailhot, which is also available at my library. I'm not sure I'm going to be reading any nonfiction at all, but I want some options in case I get in the mood for that. So those are my options for that. Another prompt is to read a comforting read or a comfort read, but I don't really have books that I reread for comfort, but I do think that Uncharmed by Lucy Wood would be a comforting read. I read Rewitched by her last year, and that was a very comforting and heartwarming story, and uplifting and just sort of soul soothing. And Uncharmed is not a sequel, but it's set in the same sort of magical world. It's cozy fantasy. It's about a witch, and this one is about sort of perfectionism and sort of people pleasing, and I think that relates to psychology, mental health, while also being a book that I want to read anyways, and a book that is uplifting and like a warm hug of a book. And yeah, I think that's going to be a fun one. Uncharmed could also fit the prompt published in 2025, as it is a new release, as is the next book that I want to mention, which is The Night Shift by Nancy Peach. I've read The Mother of All Problems by Nancy Peach before, and I thought this was fantastic. It's also a very heartwarming story and also very funny, but it also deals with the pressures of modern life, and the main character's mother is also diagnosed with dementia, so that would sort of fit with the brain theme of Neurovember. But the book that I am interested in is The Night Shift, like I mentioned, and that I think is more of a romance set in a hospital. The blurb, like quotes from people, say that, you know, if you like Grey's Anatomy and like shows like that, you might find this book interesting. The female main character is neurodivergent, so this would also fulfill the prompt to read a romance with a neurodivergent character. I don't really know much about the story. I think it's a Christmas romance, and I think it takes place like during one night shift, and I think it's quite like medical, like getting into the work that they do. I don't know if she's a doctor or a nurse or what. I don't really know. I just know that it's, you know, from an author that I've enjoyed before. It's a neurodivergent main character, and it's a romance, which I don't typically read, but yeah, it's good to have some lighter options in the mix as well. And then there are a couple of prompts combining neurodivergent representation with BIPOC representation and queer rep, and for those I have Heartberries again by Terese Mailhot, who is an Indigenous author, and I also have Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas on audiobook as an option, and that is more of a, I think it's a young adult fantasy novel with Latinx rep, and it's about a young boy who is trying to prove himself as a brujo. And there is also a prompt to read a YA book with neurodivergence representation or theme, and I found a book on my audiobook app called A Drop in the Ocean by Lea Taranto, which I think sounds really interesting. It is about a girl in treatment for OCD that combats the dehumanizing stigma around mental illness. So it follows 16-year-old Myra, and she has been checked into a secure unit of the Residency Adolescent Treatment Center. And she deals with OCD and anorexia and has brutal religious compulsions. And it says, based on the author's personal experience, A Drop in the Ocean is a gritty, humanizing portrait of living with mental illness. I might give that a try if I feel like it. The topics and themes are definitely a bit more serious, but as it is a young adult book, I feel like it might be a little bit lighter to read. But yeah, we'll see. That's an option. Another book that I hope to read in November, if not in October. Either way, I'm going to count it for Neurovember. This is Murder by Memory by Olivia Waite, and this is a queer science fiction mystery where I think people's brains or minds are sort of stored in jars of some kind, so people can sort of shift bodies, I think, at least the detective does, but then someone is trying to like erase someone's mind, and that's the crime that this detective that we're following, who is an older lady, is trying to solve. I think that relates to, you know, the brain, memory, mind, all of that. So that's how I think this qualifies for Neurovember. This could also qualify for the prompt to read a library loan or a quick read. I think those are the prompts that it fits. So one way or another, I am probably going to fit this into Neurovember. Okay, another prompt is to read a nonfiction book about any of the Neurovember themes. And I have a few on audiobook that I am interested in. I might not be interested in them in November, but we'll see. One of them is Are You Mad at Me? How to Stop Focusing on What Others Think and Start Living for You by Meg Josephson, who is apparently a psychotherapist and social media star. I haven't heard of her before, but I don't know. The reviews so far on my audiobook app of this book are very good. Are you constantly worried about what people think of you, if they like you, if they're mad at you? Are you anxious, a perfectionist, overachiever, or always overextending yourself and then resentful? Someone who avoids conflict at all costs, fearful of getting into trouble or being seen as bad, silencing your needs for the comfort and happiness of everyone else, prone to over-explain or apologize. This book is about showing that people-pleasing is not a personality trait. It is an instinct that we learn to deal with, you know, a perceived threat. It's sort of a self-help kind of book, and yeah, I think it sounds really interesting. The audiobook is read by the author, so that would fit with psychology, mental health. Another prompt is to read a book with multiple types of neurodivergence, or a book with a type of neurodivergence that isn't as often represented as ADHD and autism. And the one that I seem to come across the most that isn't ADHD or autism is OCD. And so I have another audiobook for that as well, which is At Last Count by Claire Ross Dunn. This is a novel that came out in 2023. The audiobook is about 9 hours. It says it's for readers who love Mark Haddon, which I have loved a book by, Miriam Taves, which I have a book on my TBR by, and Sally Rooney, who I don't really gel with, but that's fine. It's about a woman called Paisley who lives in Toronto, and her apartment building is going to be demolished, so she has to come back to the tight-knit community where she grew up. She's also dealing with OCD. So it says her compulsion to count in sets of 8 has little effect on thwarting bullies, her father's bad luck, and her mother's mental illness, all of which return to haunt her. For a shot at a future, Paisley needs to stare down her past, including all the habits that have stopped her from thriving. At Last Count is a wise and often laugh-out-loud funny tale that proves we don't always need to believe everything that our brain tells us. At first, I thought it was some kind of a mystery or thriller, but I think it's just like a general fiction novel, which is not really what I'm in the mood for right now, but who knows what I will want to be reading in 3 weeks or so. So that's one of the options, and I just thought I would mention it in case someone else is interested. I also have House of Beth by Carrie Cullen as an option, which also has a main character with OCD, and she is moving in with someone and their wife is sort of haunting their relationship. I think that's what it is. Vivid, addictive, and crackling with life. Yes, even the ghost. I think it has some elements of horror, but maybe not too scary. I did realize, though, that the audiobook narrator is one that I don't particularly prefer, so that made me not as excited to read that book or listen to it on audio. And it's just one of those books that I've had on my pile of possibilities for a couple of months now, and so it's just lost a little bit of its initial sparkle, but that is still one that I have as an option. I also found a really cute little thing called My Quiet Place by Monica Mikai. And I don't know how it's going to be 2 minutes because the description is like super long, but it is for anyone who struggles with sensory overload. This soothing audiobook offers a touchstone of understanding and encouraging guidance for finding your own quiet place whenever and wherever it's needed. Highlighting a common symptom of anxiety, depression, and ADHD, this compassionate and empowering book serves as a much-needed resource for children, families, and teachers. It says it's for children from 3 years, and it says that it's 2 minutes long, so I don't know. I just thought it was cute, and it qualifies for a quick read, so I am having that as an option as well, just in case I feel a bit overwhelmed, as I do. Another prompt is to read a book by a debut author, and my pick for that is Every Version of You by Grace Chan. This one was published in 2022. It's been longlisted for the Stella Prize, and I think it sounds fascinating. In late 21st century Australia, Tao Yi and her partner Navin spend most of their time inside an immersive, consumerist virtual reality called Gaia. They log on, go to work, socialize, and even eat in this digital utopia. Meanwhile, their aging bodies lie suspended in pods inside cramped apartments. Across the city, in the abandoned real world, Tao Yi's mother remains stubbornly offline, dwindling away between hospital visits and memories of her earlier life in Malaysia. When a new technology is developed to permanently upload a human brain to Gaia, Tao Yi must decide what is most important, a digital future or an authentic past. This would also fit for Australia. That's a good option, okay. So this would relate to the theme of the brain and the mind, and I just think it sounds like a very interesting story that I'm very keen to read soon. I think the cover is stunning as well, and there is a prompt to read a book with a brain-tickling cover, which you can interpret however you want. My brain likes that. Another prompt is to read a book that deals with perception, memory, or sensory experience. And I do have memory, I think, in Murder by Memory. The sensory experience is also fulfilled by My Quiet Place, which I mentioned. But I also have Never the Wind by Francesco Dimitri as an option. This follows a boy who is diagnosed with blindness, or like he has been completely blind for 8 months, and they moved to Italy and there's stuff going on. I think this is fantasy, but it sounds like a mix of different things. It says it's heady, melancholic, nuanced coming of age story. It says family, friendship, horror, humor, wit, and deception. Luca tells his story without sight, experiencing the world solely through hearing, smell, taste, and touch. When I mentioned this book in another video, I had a comment that said they had read this book recently, which was very coincidental because it has very few ratings so far. But they said that there were a lot of sensory descriptions and it's written in a very sensory way. Yeah, I think this would fit for the prompt, and it's a book that I'm very keen to get to. Is there anything else? Okay, there's also a prompt to read a translated book, and for that I have Diary of a Void by Miyagi, which I feel like I've mentioned every single video for months now. This is translated from the Japanese, I want to say. I keep mixing up things. Yes, Japanese. By David Boyd and Lucy North. It's about a woman who is dealing with sexual harassment, I think, in the workplace, and she pretends to be pregnant. And yeah, I would assume that comes with some mental health discussions. So this one would fit for translated fiction. And then there are a few activities that I have chosen, and some of them I have picked out to put on my bingo boards. As it currently stands, my 4x4 bingo board looks like this. Murder by Memory, A Drop in the Ocean, Diary of a Void in the first row, and then an activity is to make your TBR tangible. So that might be in a social media post or in a reading journal of some kind or a video. So I think this video and the fact that I have put it down in my book makes that prompt fulfilled already. And then on the second row, we have Uncharmed, Heartberries, The Night Shift, and then the activity is to pair a book with a cozy drink or snack, which that's easy. And then on the third row, I have 2 books, Every Version of You and Are You Mad at Me? And then 2 activities, which is to make a bingo card, which I have also fulfilled by doing this bingo card. And the other activity prompt is to read in a new place, and that can be in a new room or in a new, like, you know, a coffee shop or something where you don't normally read. And then on the last row I have My Quiet Place, which is that like sensory overload thing. And I have Never the Wind and Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine, which I forgot to mention before because I was going to look up the author's name and then I got distracted. But I think that book is pretty well known and I've heard a lot of good things about it, so I decided to put that on there as well. And I think the main character is neurodivergent in that book. And then the activity prompt is to match your bookmark to your current read, which I tend to do anyways, and it might not always be like they look the same, like they have the same color or same motive or something, but it just might be like the vibe of it or like so I don't know, that's one that I like to do. And then my 2 little mini bingos, which are just 3x3, look like this. The first one has Never the Wind, Read in a New Place, Every Version of You, Make a Bingo Card, Murder by Memory, Pair a Book with a Drink or Snack, Uncharmed, and then another activity prompt is to do either like switch up your reading format or do an immersive read, and I don't want any other formats, so my choice would be an immersive read. So listening to an audiobook while I read the physical book. The last square is to read The Night Shift. And then on the other mini bingo, I have Are You Mad at Me? And then an activity, which is to pair an audiobook with a cozy activity, and Diary of a Void, Make TBR Tangible, A Quiet Place, Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine, A Drop in the Ocean, Heartberries, and match your bookmark to your book. I decided to put the books on the bingo instead of the prompts because there's too many options with that. I might switch something out if I read another book and I feel like it's, you know, comparable or whatever. It's just for fun and just to have like some kind of a visual representation of what books I'm interested to read. And we'll see if I read one of them or 2 of them or 5 of them or whatever. I'm really excited to get to most of them. Some of them are a little bit more challenging, but we'll see what I'm in the mood for. I'm sure I can read at least one of these and like do an activity, and on one of my bingo boards that might be enough. I hope you check out Kat's announcement video and like the prompts and everything if you haven't already, and also her video with recommendations and her own TBR. I think this is a really fun event, and yeah, you can make it as challenging or as easy for yourself as you want, which I really appreciate because I really need a break. And you know, some time to just read for fun, but a lot of these books are books that I want to read for fun and like as uplifting reads or fun reads or just reads that I am really looking forward to. Anyways, let me know if you are also going to participate in Neurovember, or if you're considering it, or if you have any book recommendations for other people, or if you have one book that you want to read in November for the event and what that is. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Another prompt is to read a nonfiction book, and I have a couple of options as audiobooks, which I think is my preferred format for nonfiction at the moment. I don't even know what I'm saying. Okay. Another prompt. activities, activities, the activities, activities, the activities, activities, and activity, activity, activities, activity, activity,